Jesus never shows up in the Old Testament. He only shows up when the eternal Son of God takes on flesh and is conceived in the womb of Mary. Before then, in the Old Testament, when God shows up, what we would call a theophany, that is not God incarnate. It's not Jesus in the flesh. I know it may sound like nitpicking, but a lot of the times the way that we talk about God's appearances in the Old Testament, they border on a Christological heresy. You see, what can oftentimes happen is that we get really, really caught up and excited about typology, this idea that all of Scripture has been foreshadowing the coming of Jesus, that we then begin reading it back into the text when it was never intended to be read that way. And then when we read passages like John 1:18, where it says, no one has ever seen God, that is the Son who has revealed him, we get really confused because, well, what about all the times that Jesus showed up in the Old Testament? Here's a little Greek lesson. The word that John uses to say that nobody has seen God is this word horao, which properly means to stare at. If you take that word in context with what John is saying in the rest of his gospel, what he's saying is nobody has ever properly beheld God, fully understood him. Even in the Old Testament, when you see all the times that God reveals himself to people, he's always this mysterious figure. When he reveals himself to Moses and the elders, when he shows himself as a burning bush, when he wrestles Jacob, when he shows himself in the temple to Isaiah, the way that he's always described is a very shadowy figure. And so there's this mystery to this God. There's really no form or shape to him. He's primarily known by what he does rather than who he is. And what the writers of the New Testament, and especially John here, is trying to communicate to us is that now we have actually observed who God is. We know his kindness, his mercy, his love, his forgiveness, because we know Jesus Christ. I've used this illustration before, but let's imagine for a second you went out to the bookstore and you picked up Walter Isaacson's biography on Elon Musk. Here's the question: how well do you know Elon Musk after reading that book? You don't know Elon Musk well. You know about him because you read about him. You know what he's done. You know his accomplishments. You know his failures. You maybe know a little bit of information about him that Walter Isaacson's thought was important for you to know. But him as a person, you don't know him. You would actually have to get to meet him. And not only just meet him, but be around him, be close to him for years in order to get to understand his character and who he is as a person. And the same thing goes for Jesus. Building up to Jesus' arrival, we have heard about God. We have seen what God has done, but we don't know him. And that's what John is ultimately